Welcome to Read, Think, Act. Today we'll be hearing from Richard Seymour, author of The Disenchanted Earth, Reflections on Eco-Socialism and Barbarism.
I think reading is quite physical, like walking and talking, and it gets your ideas into motion along with the blood and breath. So it has as much to do with the sensibility as with the intellect. So you can read your rigorous texts about energetics, metabolism, evolution, marine biology, and all of that stuff, and that all will inform you. But it obviously doesn't engage the body in the same way as literature or, let's say, romantic poetry, if you're into that kind of thing, nature writing, transcendentalist prose, whatever it happens to be that you're into. The hard-headed analyses and programs don't necessarily engage you in the same way. And the thing about that is that we do need to be engaged on that level. We need, as I say in the book, a planetary sensibility, which is a way not just of thinking, but of feeling about and in the world, a way of imagining one's dependence on unseen webs of life, a way of feeling that in one's waters. And so, if it's not just about learning how desperate situation is, but of discovering whether and to what extent you feel about the planet and how and in what ways, reverence, gratitude, fascination, mourning, anger, delight, all of that stuff is valid. And sometimes there's important childhood memories of being involved with nature that can all be relevant too. For me, ambulatory nature writers like Rebecca Solnit or Robert Macfarlane or Henry David Thoreau are very important, just as important as your John Bellamy Fosters or Andreas Malms. I need to be goaded into feeling a particular way, provoked as much as I need to be informed or theoretically challenged. I would start with what makes human society and nature appear to us as separate categories. I mean, of course, they are different. They're different modalities of stuff, of matter. Human societies possess certain emergent qualities like capitalism, for example, that you don't find among plants and animals. So there's an important distinction, but they're also entangled. This is what we mean by the web of life. So there's an author, I mentioned Andreas Malm, Jason W. Moore makes the point that the screen of capital perceptually separates the idea of nature and the idea of society because of the way that it appropriates nature as a free gift. It's just there, taken for granted, a cornucopia, while appropriating human labor as waged. So, and of course, we live in a society that disavows its dependence upon natural processes. So where commodities are presented in such a way as to disavow their origins in the earth and its processes. It's not just we see the sausage, but not the sausage factory. We see petrol, but not fossil sunlight captured by photosynthesis in the Mesozoic era by plants and trees and mosses. We see burgers, not forest clearings, or cattle reared on rainforest killing, Indonesian palm nut, or indigenous communities being burned or shot out in Brazil. Everything is set up so we don't see the whole metabolic process. One of Marxism's critical concepts is totality, meaning don't just look at the fragments, see how everything is related in a system, see how capital requires not just the extraction of dead energy from the earth, but the extraction of caloric energy from human workers, and see how that turns into the political management of, for example, today, informalized slum dwellers or recalcitrant indigenous populations or racialized parts of the working class. Or see how that's connected to toxic dumping, deforestation, and carbon emissions. Now, without that kind of perspective, all you can see is a series of discrete problems, like you have your climate change, you have your mass extinction, there's pollution, there's dumping, and you kind of fill in the gaps with ideology. You blame something nebulous like, oh, human greed, selfishness, or overpopulation by the poor. What I'm trying to indicate here is I think this is structured in the way that we live, in the way that we inhabit capitalist society, and in the way that it shuts off certain parts of reality to us. And so it takes a real critical effort, whether you're privileged or not, frankly, to be able to overcome that perceptual violence? Well, I would say that nihilism is related to a kind of thwarted mourning. So, famously, Slavoj Žižek relates an anecdote about a man whose wife has died. And for some time, he seems not to be grieving and able to reflect on it completely dispassionately, coolly, without being upset. And his friends conclude that he's a rather callous, indifferent kind of person, which is similar to the kind of apathy that people evince about climate change. Nothing to do with me, that kind of thing. It turned out that while talking about his wife, he always held her pet hamster in his hands, and that enabled him to disavow her death. I mean, he knew she was dead, but he could live as if she wasn't. So the question about any apathetic, apolitical cynic, for a start, is what is your pet hamster? What's your secret ideal that you can't let go of? And for some people, it might be something as simple as memories of the coast or hills where they grew up. Or for some people, it might be a dream of freedom, which is linked to petromodernity, get you on your on the road, get your motor running, get out on the highway, look for adventure. Where it becomes nihilistic is where once my pet hamster is taken away, I still can't mourn for one reason or another, and I become melancholic, self-loathing, furious, resentful, bitter, impotent, and I act out destructively. I say, let's party like it's like 1999, let's get drunk and burn all the fossil fuel today, baby, because I can't bear the hard choices, the letting go, the starting again. It's too much. Climate mourning is interestingly first documented in indigenous communities in the Arctic and in Australia, which is worth underlining because, there's an idea that it might be a useless indulgence of privileged people. And I've seen that circulated around, but actually climate mourning is realism. If you weren't mourning, you would be mad. But the point is not to stay in mourning. The point is to get something moving. You mourn in order to start again. And that starting again, giving up on what you have, but emerging with what John Berger called, in reference to the Palestinian struggle, undefeated despair. That can be very empowering.